All right, so we're back in the conversation with Steve Jenkins, and where we left off in part one was I was asking him about his writing process for his second record. That record is titled Steve Jenkins and the Coaxial Flutter. It's got a really progressive metal thing happening to it, and it was much different than his first record, and I want to know about his process. So that's where we're picking up in the conversation, and here it is. Here's the talk with Steve Jenkins. How do you go about doing that? Was that something that was created in the studio over the course of, or do you actually like have a vision for this whole arc when you sit down and somewhere it's in Sibelius?
Well, so the first record was written, I guess the way a lot of those tunes work, except for like one or two, they're written as like things that people could play, and like their identities would come out, and that would sort of breathe life into the way those tunes work. Like they're, you know, for all intents and purposes, I think it was mostly to capture a vibe. There were a couple things that were magical on that first thing that like just literally happened.
With the interplay?
Yeah. Like track.
It's a really nice record.
Thanks.
Really
like track 4 was the one that I had Sam Kinninger play sax on. That literally happened the way it sounds. Like it was pretty much live.
Okay.
And there was a couple overdubs, like with like Jeff wanted to have some different keyboard sounds, but that was like a whole live thing that just happened.
Like dudes in a room style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the one that sucks in that regard, because I went and like we had a mixing dilemma with that track where it was like the way that dude had recorded my bass, it was like super compressed and really hard to salvage tone wise. Mm-hmm. So like my buddy, who's a really good engineer, he sat me down and was like, look, man, he's like, you're going to hate me telling you this, but you got to recut the bass. Like, so can you redo your performance? Yeah. And like, we can go like every 4 bars. I'm like, man, I hate doing this.
Sure.
But from like
the integrity of the music standpoint.
Yeah. From the way it sounds. So I did that, and we had the original take, so we could A/B it. Yeah. And I felt like this is a thing where it's like, I know I played all this stuff live, you know, like I punched, even in the studio, like I punched like the little bass melody with the wild stuff, but they were done like, you know, as long as those sections were.
Sure.
But like the grooving parts were all live, and like they just didn't sound as good as like the recut versions playing the same exact ideas. So in the interest of making that record sound better,
just sonically.
Yeah, sonically, like we went with that. Like it, because it's like, man, it's not a straight ahead jazz record. We're not in Rudy Van Gelder's like den.
Right, it's not Blue Note.
Yeah, we're like, so who the fuck cares? But like, you know, it was one of those things where I was a little bit bummed that we couldn't use the original thing, because it's a cool thing to like have that in your back pocket, like, oh, this was live, and this is
and it just feels good. I don't know if it's necessarily ego driven thing, but like, that's what it is.
Yeah,
like better for worse, like I like it, and that's what it is.
Yeah,
and that happened at that day at that time.
Yeah. So I think a lot of those tunes were approached like that. Also, there was sort of this, I think the one thing I should say is like there's like 7 years between working on those albums, or maybe 8 to be honest, because like 2003 is when I stopped. The first one, it was pretty much done. I wrote and kind of put together the music for the second one in the fall of 2011, and the way I went about writing that was that I wasn't concerned with the world knowing that, like, oh, okay, I was really influenced by like Marcus Miller and Matt Garrison and Gary Willis. Like, I didn't care about any of that stuff,
right?
Because
I think that's I don't think the first record is a like a cliche introducing record.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're purposely covering a lot of the areas.
Yeah.
but not in a way that it's just a showcase.
Yeah.
Like each one works per tune, and the whole record has an arc to it.
That's good to hear. And like I taught a lesson recently to someone that wanted to know one of the phrases I was playing on like that first tune, and like my playing's changed a lot.
There's a lot of fretless on that first record, wasn't there?
No fretless at all. Just,
really?
Yeah, it's all like fretted, but back pickup.
You got that dialed.
Yeah.
Like the smooth connectedness of it all.
Yeah. No, I mean I want to get a fretless one day. I don't have one, but
Have you ever?
No, I definitely want to get like one of those like fretless Music Mans, like what Pino had. Like I love that sound.
Man, I
so
had
much.
one.
Did you?
I had a. So what was it? 77 was like when they started Music Man, I think, right?
I think something like
around
that.
there. I think this was like an 82 or 84 fretless.
Oh damn!
Got stolen from my car.
Oh, that sucks.
I've
man.
had several basses. So like I had that, and I had an MTD 535 stolen.
Damn.
Yeah.
I've never had any basses stolen. I had a cabinet stolen out of the back of my truck in Brooklyn. Like, not
410?
even. It was like one of those Bergantino 322s.
Okay.
So it was like, it had like a 12 and some 10s.
Yeah. Amazing cabs.
Yeah,
I had the $210
amazingly heavy
for a while.
cabs,
Yeah.
which is why I didn't bring it in. And I think, when I moved to New York, this will get us back on this thing. Like I was still taking gigs in Boston because I was in a wedding band.
Okay.
And we had gigs till the end of the year.
Dope.
So like I was going back and forth a lot. That house I was living in, I had couch privileges.
Okay.
Which was great
Sure.
because it was like, easy enough to get back and forth and have a place to stay.
Yeah.
And you have a place to like practice good hygiene and like it wasn't totally roughing it.
Right. A little bit better than the Loves.
Yeah. Exactly. So, man, like that, like my rig at the time was like that cabinet had a Walter Woods head. And like, I think around that time, we're talking like 2004, there was like some girl I was kind of hanging with in New York. And like, I think I picked her up on the way back to my apartment after being gone like for a weekend, and we went inside, and somehow I just thought it would be okay to leave my bass underneath, or leave that cabinet underneath the tarp in the back of this car, because I had done it 5 times and nothing happened.
Yeah.
So she leaves the next day, and I come outside for the first time, just to sort of run and get a coffee. I was living in Greenpoint at that point in Brooklyn, and I look across the street. There's my truck. There's a weird, clear, like slightly brighter than the tinted window shape of the passenger window.
Okay.
And I went and looked at it, and it had been smashed out. Someone had like reached in, like opened the doors. They broke the small window, so at least they were sort of not complete dicks about it.
Right.
And they stole the cab, and it was one of those things.
Or they are complete dicks because like that's just under what your insurance is.
Right.
So it's all out of pocket.
Yeah.
Either they're really smart or gracious.
It was a drag, man. Like it was a super, super bad scene. And,
Sure.
And it's like when you talk to cops about stolen property out of your car, the first thing they kind of ask is like, "Why'd you leave in?" It's almost like a "Why did you?"
Yeah, right. Like you're the idiot.
Yeah.
For leaving your own stuff in your own vehicle.
Yeah, and it's a tough position to hold, but they're not wrong either. So
yeah,
that's ultimately how I got hooked up with Aguilar, because my friend, he was endorsing them, and and I said, man, I think considering my record's going to be reviewed in Bass Player in January 2015, I got some stuff going on. Now is probably a good time for me to start talking to a company about working with them.
Yeah, getting some momentum there.
Yeah, so I sold my Walter Woods head and bought, I got artist pricing when I initially joined with them, so I used the money from the Walter Woods head to buy my rig, and that was it. But
what were you doing? What was the rig?
It was at a 210 and 212, and like they had an amp at the time called the AG 500.
Yeah,
which was cool. I like what I'm using now a lot better.
Okay, still Aguilar?
Yeah, like the Tone Hammer preamp for me is sort of the.
They sound amazing.
Yeah, I really like them. I mean, there's a lot of great amps now, man.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of stuff for a bass player. And ironically, coming out of like the Class D, like Walter Woods,
Yeah.
like people finally caught up to that. I think the thing about Walter that I liked but didn't like was that he's some guy that lives in the middle of the desert somewhere, and
Right.
but then it's like, what happens if something goes bad and that's your main amp, you know? And so
Where is he based out of?
I can't remember now, man. Like, but it just, I think it might be somewhere in California, but I'm not sure. I don't remember anymore.
Okay.
But part of me thinks, it's like he works at Roswell or something. That's not true. That's not true at all. But that was my picture. Like, I just picture some guy and like, there's like this like tiny shed with a mailbox, but except it's not really a tiny shed. You go in and it's like an elevator.
Yeah.
And then downstairs is like this giant
mad scientist vibe.
Yeah. So those amps were cool, but in retrospect, I don't have any regrets about how it went down.
Sure.
It was definitely, but I hate, it sucked having a vehicle broken into. And I hate whenever I see people saying, this happened, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, obviously no one intends to have their stuff stolen.
No.
But it's like, if you run into a place for a couple minutes and, but I've never not thought about that.
Right.
Like if I leave my bass in the back seat somewhere for a second, it's like, I don't know, man, is this smart?
Right.
So, but I don't think people trip about that stuff out here the way they do on the East Coast. I know theft happens, but
theft definitely happens in like, I don't know, do you have your stuff insured? Or is it covered through like renter's insurance or something?
See, I don't think renter's insurance covers it if you're a professional musician. I think if you just own instruments, then it's not a big deal. But if it's like this is your livelihood, no, I should be insured. I'm not.
Yeah, I got to look into that. I feel like I should like rep some cheap gear insurance. I was thinking about this the other day. Just I don't know why, but I should really do some research and look into it and like use this to talk about musicians getting their thing covered.
Yeah, I don't think it's
either all been there or we know somebody who's been there, and it's it's a terrible feeling to walk back to your car and like and like cabinets. I'd be fine if like my amp got stolen.
Right.
Like it would suck. I'd
what
have
are
to
you
get
using?
I got an Epiphany Ultralight 112.
Nice.
And a GK. Whatever their brand is, like the 500 watt little guy.
Okay.
What are those things called? There's like a brand name for that series. Micro bass? No, it's not a micro bass, is it?
Like the MB series or something. I don't know their stuff that well. Like I know that Fusion 550 head's supposed to be.
Those are supposed to be amazing. I think Rufus plays one of those, and he always gets a great sound.
Yeah.
But I used to use the little lunchbox combo for so many gigs on electric and upright.
Oh, like the
just the 112 combo.
That was a thing, man.
And like
that was a thing.
That was my main amp actually for a long time in LA. If I needed more, I could hook it up to a system, and it was cool.
Yeah.
Or all these small restaurant jazz gigs.
Yeah.
It's perfect. And so I knew that I could get a good sound out of the GK thing on electric and upright, so I just stayed with them. And then the Epiphanies are amazing cabs.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. Again, for both instruments. Like me and this other bass player did a whole shootout one time because he's got a bunch of gear, and we're just checking things out.
Yeah.
Epis were my favorite.
Yeah.
Brigantino, though, I had the 210. Loved that thing.
Yeah. It was cool. I don't know. Bass gear is interesting now because I think like there's a lot of ways to get it done, and there's less roads that are not. I think there's like it's hard to sound bad now considering like what's available.
Sure.
Which is cool.
Are you a pedals guy?
Yeah.
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 What's your pedal board situation? I never really got into it.
Well, when I was playing with Fiuczynski, that's where I really got to work on stuff with pedals and like develop some things. But then, because a lot of his stuff, like we did a record called Keef Express, and
is this his record?
It's his record.
Okay.
Like it was the OC2 sound a lot, like the sine wave thing that Tim LaFave is sort of known for making famous. And then like the regular octaver sound that like the Pino Palladino sound from the 80s. I have like a bunch of different things. What's
your octaver? Is it the Boss?
I have the OC2. Yeah, okay. And then I have the MXR, like both like the Octave Deluxe and like the little vintage one.
Yeah.
Those are both really good. The Aguilar one's really good. I have a couple envelope filters, which I like.
Now, how would you, when choosing an octaver, and so now you're speaking to me because I'm not really a pedals guy. Two, people who are like going to be shopping for something. What are you looking for when it's one basic function? All it has to do is supply the bottom octave. What makes one better than the other?
I think how it tracks.
Okay.
You know, like you play something. I mean, if you play like a 16th note kind of bass line or play like a Stevie Wonder kind of left-hand fill or something, I think hearing how it tracks with all that, and then also like playing some notes in different positions and seeing how well it...
The evenness of it. Okay.
Yeah, and some of them have a glitch that's not undesirable, like the Boss one. It's got imperfections, but they're cool.
Yeah.
Imperfections. You know, I think it's a great way to like make certain things pop a certain way or build excitement, or you know, be part of a I guess like, you know, if you're going to do synthesis using pedals, if that's going to be what creates like sort of the seed of like a synthesizer based sound, and then you like combine like an overdrive and like compression or like some modulation to it.
Yeah, you did some cool stuff like that on your second record where it's like the sound morphed.
Yeah, thanks.
And it was a slow pace, but a pace that was like, okay, I can recognize what's happening also.
Yeah.
It's just like, what's the word? It just fragmented out into like this whole other thing.
Yeah.
It was a really cool effect.
Thanks, man.
Did you build those tracks yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, you did all the programming.
I programmed a lot. I played a bunch of instruments on that record. So going back to that question about like the difference between that first one and the second one, all the tunes were demoed to a certain degree. Like they all were, like I programmed.
Right, you built them in the can.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the idea was also to sort of see how long they should be, because I knew I wanted to make another instrumental album, but I didn't want it to be reliant on there being soloists necessarily.
Right.
So, which I don't think a lot of people that write instrumental music really always consider that. Like, I feel like a lot of the instrumentals that I like, and this is what sort of influenced that record, was me listening to not just jazz or fusion records, but instrumentals that I really liked. Like, what makes these cool, and what is it about this that makes it work for the listener?
What were your go-to kind of sources? Yeah, for inspiration.
Well, there was like soundtrack stuff.
Yeah. I hear some of that. I hear some like things that could definitely be like a Radiohead texture.
Yeah. YYZ, that's a great instrumental.
Sure.
Some of the stuff on like some of the Weather Report songs, like the way those sort of work, and there's not really any kind of solos going on. They're just parts and stuff.
You ever check out Mark Johnson's Bass Desires?
Yeah.
Records where they're just like, there's no blowing. It's just vibe.
Yeah.
It's like Frizzell or Schofield or something just playing a surf tune.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love those records.
Yeah. That stuff's great. I think that's really the crux of what I was trying to do. And then the solos that are on there, like the first track, that's a bass solo, even though it sounds like baritone guitar. The second track, that's Vernon Reid. Everyone knows.
Yeah.
No one's going to think that's me taking a solo on there. And then the third one is the only time I use like an actual bass sound for soloing. There's another one where I use an octave up pedal that sounds like fast guitar, but it's bass.
Okay.
So,
now, what was kind of the impetus for the conceptual shift between something that is a little bit more old school in the sense of like dudes in a room vibe? Were you specifically doing something different to challenge yourself as a kind of a writer / producer?
I think it also was more reflective of what I had been listening to at that point. Like, so, you know, I mean, I love metal, and I like a lot of progressive rock stuff, and I like
what is some go-to just quintessential, like, I don't know if quintessential is the right word, records you'll always go to
For
just you, like
for
this
me,
is
like, stuff that I would like.
Like what you're gonna put on when you're not trying to do anything musical. When like it's just like you love this record for that record's sake.
Oh wow, well.
And I know that that's a long list for all of us.
That's a long list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see, man.
For me, they all have a different purpose. You know, like Bill Evans Trio or Sting or D'Angelo or
right.
You know, honestly, like lately, it's been like Garth Brooks live records.
Oh wow!
Like I'm into it for whatever reason. I'm gonna ride that out till I get sick of it.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't know. Like the stuff that's sort of like not really steeped in like musician.
Yeah.
I guess like stuff that's like kind of independent of being a musician, but stuff that maybe there might be overlap if there's a Venn diagram, like enjoyment, musical fulfillment.
Sure.
Like there's that space in the middle.
Where where you're kind of you can turn off the what's he doing there thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll just rattle off a few.
Prince and Kiss still high on the list.
Like 1999, that record's like a big deal for me. Like Kiss, like maybe like Alive 2, Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2. Actually, let's say all the first 6 Van Halen records with David Lee Roth.
Okay.
Like,
is this because you don't dig the Sammy years?
I do like the Sammy years.
Okay.
Yeah, Sammy's great, and I feel like the thing is like Van Halen's one of those bands where there's only been a few bands like that where the singer changes and the band is still really successful. Like AC/DC was one of those bands. This is probably more controversial, but I loved the Sabbath stuff with Dio singing.
Okay.
It was definitely a different sounding band after Ozzy left, but Dio was that guy was an amazing singer, man. So like that, it was I almost feel like that was more analogous to like the Van Halen thing. It's like they got a guy who sings more, like he has a more dynamic vocal instrument than the first guy, so they can write different types of things.
Yeah.
So I think that's a cool thing. But man, you know, like I'm trying to think, like the first Bad Brains record and Eye Against Eye by Bad Brains, Joni Mitchell's records, like even just from like a listening standpoint. I'm trying to think what else that I would just listen to and put on. Like Donny Hathaway live.
All day.
Journey's greatest hits.
Okay.
I mean, I like their records too, but there's a lot of good stuff on there. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so a lot of that stuff...
It's kind of still pulling from that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, what's weird is the bass playing's really good on those records.
Yeah.
Tears for Fears.
Okay.
Like Songs from the Big Chair. Seeds of Love is a good record, but Songs from the Big Chair, for whatever reason,
I don't own any of it, but I'm sure I've heard some of the tunes.
Yeah. And Justice for All by Metallica.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite
So
records.
you were coming up kind of from this rock, metal, but also...
hip-hop, too.
Yeah, like, so that's all in there, and that's all...
Yeah.
Now, did you get into jazz via fusion just to explore...
Mostly harmony.
Yeah, and getting away with things on the instrument that you can't get away with in other styles.
Yeah.
Progressive rock or metal, I'm not sure where the line on that is, but things like Rush, like he's getting away with some stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not in an improvised sense.
No. I mean, I think what's interesting about Rush, and I remember being in music school, like, where they come up and, you know, the people that are really trying to learn jazz kind of, you know, maybe they loved them at one point and then they kind of shun that because it's not improvised. But I think when people sort of look at music from, like, sort of a non-emotional, like, adult, maybe an adult, like, more refined standpoint, it's like, well, if the goal is to have a career based off of a unique vocabulary, I mean, I can't think of any band that's successful that isn't doing that.
Right.
And Rush has their own language and it works for them. I mean, I think like a lot of drummers who come up that aren't like coming from like a church background, or they're not coming from like a jazz background. Like they're coming from like, I listen to rock and roll, and like the drummers I like were like Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, or whatever. They have some facility, but like if they're trying to assimilate like what Philly Jones did, or like Tony Williams, and so I would see people do this a lot, and I never agreed with it. Like they'll kind of shun their own rock influences to absorb jazz.
Right,
like,
because they feel like they got to be a jazz nerd to really be accepted in the world.
I could never do that, man.
Yeah.
I always thought that was like, I don't know anybody who really took that approach where it worked out for them. Seriously, man, like, because I think the bottom line is like, you can't force how that stuff is. Like, if people really want to get good at something, you have to listen. Like, if I wanted to get really good at like playing Latin music, which is not my strong suit, man, and I'd have to listen to it like I'd have to listen to those records I just listed.
Right, and just really absorb it.
Yeah, and love it.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing it because I want people to think I'm a good musician,
right,
I've failed.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. If it's just a box you got to check, well, like, all right, I got my Latin thing together.
Yeah. It's different if you're doing a gig where, okay, there's 2 songs where it has to feel authentic.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this gig for 5 months, and I don't want to suck on it. That's a little bit different. But if it's like, if your fundamental thing is like, I want people to think I'm a good musician.
Right, and you want to be eligible for work within that world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a Latin guy.
Yeah, I think that's a big fail, man. Even if the intent is good, I think that's the part that I feel like a lot of people get stuck on.
Sure, I think there's a lot of just pitfalls when you're trying to figure out who you want to be.
Yeah.
On your instrument and as a musician, there's a lot of pitfalls, and it's something kind of Rustlin and I talked about. It's just like the guys that were the legends, that everybody still regards as the legends, were just trying to be themselves.
Yep.
And like the pursuit was a personal pursuit.
Yeah.
But it seems like you're doing a very similar thing, like on that trajectory. Like you want to be known for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's being bold about that, and kind of even putting the boundaries on your career.
Yeah.
To stay in that lane.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, I think that's cool to hear, and I appreciate that. I think also, like, within those parameters, there's a lot of stuff I can do as a hireable musician, but like, yeah, man, it's like there's things that people want to do that I just don't know. I wouldn't know if it would be something I'd be up for unless I tried it and saw. But like, yeah, like the idea of like, I don't know. Like, I think trying to think of like if there's a specific thing I can point to that is like an automatic no, I don't think so. And I don't know if it's really that as much as it is like I don't know. It's tough to say, man, because sometimes I'll find myself playing stuff and it's like I never would have thought I'd do something like this.
Just gig wise?
Or just, even session wise. Like I did sort of like a smoother kind of like session, and it was like great people on the session, great players, and
is that here in LA?
Yeah, it was here in LA, and it was like we made it work, and it was a lot of fun, man. And like I would have never thought that I would have gotten called for something like that, but it was sort of a positive experience. So I think it's hard to like totally see where the walls or the ceiling is for opportunities or things I would or would not do. But I know my head is in the space that like I'm trying to like create and be, sort of operate from a place of having an identity. But it doesn't mean to the exclusion of doing gigs where sometimes that's not such a big deal.
Sure.
So it's like...
Yeah, balancing those two worlds is different, because if this is our occupation...
Yeah.
There's always bills.
Yeah.
So that's just that.
Yeah.
And then, but then there's this other... It's like you're managing 2 careers at the same time.
Yeah.
I had tried it at one point to, like, do that and release... like, trying to get an original project off the ground that I was writing for and managing and marketing and doing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And still just go play private events and restaurants and whatever to pay bills.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, and it's kind of a completely different mind.
It is.
Like, all right, I got to turn off the top 40 wedding band guy thing, and I got to go write a couple tunes.
Yeah.
Because we got this gig coming up, and I want to bring in some new charts to the gig.
Yeah.
It's fun to hop back and forth between the brains, but it's a very demanding.
Yeah.
Regimen. If someone can keep it happening, that's great.
Yeah.
It's just a lot.
Well, I do believe in having that skill set as a bass player, like to be able to go in, like, because my concept as far as like the kind of bass player I wanted, I always aspire to be is someone who can, like, the drummer is going to say good things about.
Yeah.
And the musicians are going to be like, that guy made the band sound great.
Sure.
Like, so someone that wants to do their own thing is not, so I can get away from that. Like, I love that.
Right.
And like, I'd say
there is it took me a while to understand, but there's a fun process involved with being a sideman, because you have to, with good musicians. That being said, if I show up and like cats can't play or whatever, then it's just a drag, because we're not all coming from the same place.
Right.
But if all that foundational work is there, and thankfully I get to work with a lot of greats in LA, and I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
To really just get in, and there's like, you have just a couple minutes to kind of, if it's the first time the 3 or 4 of us have ever played together, but sideways we've all worked together in different scenarios.
Yeah.
Quickly figure it out.
Yeah.
And like, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
It's like to really quickly assimilate to how to still be me within these parameters now.
Yeah.
That's a fun thing for me.
Yeah.
Is that little kind of micro navigating.
Yeah.
Because then that's a challenge for me.
Yeah. I take that part of it really seriously, man. Like, I think that's the thing. I mean, I definitely think there's people, you can tell they want to just do their own thing and they don't care as much. But I still like the idea that you're going to be thrown into a situation where you got to make music work. And,
sure.
If you get to do it with people who somehow, like, sometimes you get the right lift from somebody just from like having a positive experience like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I'm lucky, man. The coolest thing I can say about moving out to LA is the first drummer I did gigs with was James Gadsden.
Nice.
You know what I mean? Like,
have you been out to his Thursday night thing where he plays with Abe?
I haven't. That's at the Write-Off Room.
Yeah.
The
owner was at my gig about a month ago and came up and was talking to me. And I got his number, and I keep telling him I'm going to stop out.
Yeah.
I want to do a talk with Abe. But,
Abe's great.
Yeah. Maybe let's roll out Thursday.
Yeah, I want to check that out.
I need to go out there. I've been hearing a lot about it.
Yeah.
I want to meet Abe.
He's a sweet guy, man. I know his kid really well, like Mateo.
Okay.
Because he was in Boston at the same time. But yeah, like, my friend couldn't do this thing. It was like, I don't know if I call it a vanity project, but it was basically, we were playing songs that sounded like songs James actually played drums on.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so my friend passed it to me, and I was like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
And like, it was cool, man. Me and James made it work, and James liked my playing and had nice things to say, and took my number in case he ever needed to call me for some stuff. But
yeah.
We had it was cool, man.
That's cool.
I don't really come from that realm, but it was nice that, like, we made it work. Like, I have a P bass, like, I used that on those gigs, and it has flats on it, and I was able to, like, play the stuff authentically, and that's like that was a big deal for me. That
if you get the nod from Gatson, about like the pockets working, that's a solid endorsement.
I think it's cool, man. I mean, but I think it matters to me that, like, like, I've done stuff with Thomas Pridgen, and we're friends, and if that stuff can work, like, I care about that too. So I think that's it. Like, that, I really like that element of being a bass player, like trying to make it work with a drummer. But I think the part of me, like, the more alpha part of me wants to make sure I have something going on that like doesn't matter if like I'm not getting called all the time.
I think it's necessary for musician sanity.
Yeah.
When I first got here, similar to the Gadsden thing, one of the first drummers I played with was Herman Matthews.
Oh, yeah. I just did some with him, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like 24, 25, and I had heard those Tower of Power records, but I just knew it was Rocco, and like that was, whatever. And we're at this rehearsal. The gig was opening up for the Bacon Brothers.
Oh, cool.
Out of like Canyon Club or something way out.
It's like Agora Hills or something?
Yeah, out there. And so he gets to the rehearsal, and I don't know who the drummer is on this project, and he walks in, and I don't know who Herman Matthews is either. So like he's just the drummer. I'm like, okay, cool. Damn. Like we played through the first tune. It's kind of like this groovy John Mayer type artist we were playing with. I think Herman might have produced the dude's EP. I don't know. And then right after we get done playing, he's like, man, did it shuffle too much? And all I'm thinking about, who the hell is this guy? Like, that pocket was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's just such a sweetheart. And I've run into him a few times since. I haven't played with him in a while. But there was one of like, okay, this is L.A. I just played, went home and looked him up like, oh, you're that guy. Yeah. Damn. Okay, this is L.A.
It's cool when you don't know who someone is and they don't tell you.
Right. I agree.
That's definitely, because I really think, that happens a lot of places. I mean, I think that might have been like a stereotypical L.A. thing, and it probably still is, but I think we live in a world that's referential now. So it's like, and who are you? Why do you matter? Or, and I think it's because of the way things are connected, it's good to have something people can like check out. But I think it's awesome if you don't know who someone is and they're like, oh shit,
Right. No, it was definitely that. And then I went right home and I was listening to Tower of Power again, like still digging on James Brown. Yeah. That I love it.
Yeah, like I'm better off not knowing who is around sometimes.
Or like what the resumes are.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really. There's not like a lot of shit that freaks me out anymore. But like, even still, it's like, I think ultimately, if you're, the easiest thing to do is just focus on what you're playing, like musically, like not your bass playing, but just, what helps me out is just like thinking about what the music is.
Sure.
And not like, okay, is this drummer played with like whoever, like insert name of tremendous bass player that, is either really inspiring or is terrifying.
Or what, now since I know who he's played with, what is he thinking about me right now?
Right.
Because I'm not Christian McBride or whoever.
But man, it's like there's also limits to what people are good at. And I think like some of the gods, I've heard that out here, man. I won't say who they are, but it's like nobody's infallible, man. There's definitely like limits to where people's strengths are. And I think, it's like, it doesn't mean that people have to be called out or it has to be like talked about, but it's like, if people are really going to be honest, it's like, I think that guy blew the form once, like just whatever. Shit happens, man. People are mortals, like it is what it is. But like, I think it's foolish to assume that like, just because one dude's been on like a ton of records that like they're going to be amazing at everything. There's a few, I mean, you got Vinny Colaiuta, who I believe is probably one of the only people that might be like that, because it's like, well,
I'm sure we have some mutual friends that have done sessions with him, and I've heard the stories of what he's like in the session, and it's exactly what you would think.
Yeah. That's definitely one dude I would love to play with, man. Like, just to see what it's like, and, maybe
mine would be Gad. Like, I would love just play like a medium tempo, simple groove with Gad and just feel how big he makes it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all that stuff is, it would be cool to like just have an experience to see what it's like to play with any of those guys. But I also feel like, the minute you kind of are in a space with quote unquote hero types, you got to be willing to just get rid of that because
Right, get at the internal dialogue.
yeah. Because ultimately it's about working, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like
They're on the gig too, so just
like,
do it.
Like if you're a professional musician and like you're on a gig with another professional musician who's a legend, I mean, it's not rock and roll fantasy camp. No, no slight to that thing,
Sure,
but like you know what I mean. Like if you're both on the same thing, you have to like whatever that person did or what you did before that is inconsequential to what's being played at the time. So it's like, you know, and I think that's a really cool thing about music is like, you know, the experiences can get time stamped by whatever, but
speaking of that, what is there works of another? Because I think that's what records are. They're time stamps of who we are in our personal journey. Are you working towards one? Is that something you're
we're writing some new stuff.
You're actively writing, or things are just rattling around in the noggin?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like time to mind the store again, man.
Yeah.
I always seem to do really well, man, when I'm doing my own thing. Like, there's more sideman stuff that comes around. I think that's just sort of a cycle I need to embrace more.
Sure.
Because, you know, there's the other part of kind of like living wherever is like, I do quite a bit of remote sessions.
Okay.
And like a lot of times that's fueled by stuff people have heard on things I've played on, not even just my albums. And yeah, I got to reinvest in that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I obviously want to put out music, but it's also, you know, that helps everything.
Sure.
It also, I think, lets people hear kind of like what I'm doing, and you know, like I think that's why it's helpful for musicians, I think, to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even like the dumb little, 40-second videos. Like,
sure.
I've been having fun.
Cool.
I don't know if I'll do this again this week, but I did a couple things with Mark Lettieri's little bits he'll throw out. Like I took one and programmed drums and then put bass on it, and it's fun to do that, man. Yeah. And like people can hear the way you would approach a collaborative thing.
Sure.
But I try to think about it in terms of just I'm trying to have a good time with it and make something that I'd want to listen to. And then
I think that will ultimately always translate if the people creating are fully invested in the enjoyment process of creating.
Yeah.
That will always translate to the people who are viewing or witnessing the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think when it gets really contrived and
or even if there's just like a phoned in vibe. Yeah. Where like you're not really committed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've been on gigs like that too, where you can just feel that someone's phoning it in. And like they're not in it. Like maybe you and the drummer are in it, but then like this guy's phoning it in. Just like, well then you're kind of sandbagging me, dude. Like
right.
The whole music can only go so far now.
Yeah.
And then like it's hard to continue. And that being said, I've been the guy who's just like phoning it in because I'm just whatever. I'm over it. Had a bad day, had a bad night. Before the gig, I show up. I'm not 100%. So I've been the guy too. Yeah, I mean, I've had gigs where things have gone bad, and like. Oh yeah, let's do this now. We were talking about before we started a gig story. We'll wrap with this. Worst gig story. Worst gig story. Now it could be like because the gig was funny or just like, I think Brian Ladd got punched in the back of the head on a break or something. Yeah, it was really funny. Was it out here? No, it was New York. Oh wow, that was my favorite one. Sometimes I forget to ask people, but we started talking about this earlier before the mics were on. So right. Not that we need to go back to that story. Right. Well, I mean, that was a whole tour debacle. That was a whole tour debacle. Yeah, I mean that sucked. That would be like worst professional experience thus far. Yeah, that's not like a funny anecdote. That's just like that sucked. Yeah, it sucked. I mean, and it's one of those things too where I couldn't go out, man, because I could tell I was really angry and toxic. Yeah. And so I got into writing stuff. Okay. To offset waking up super mad. It took a while to let that seep out, but I really believe that was the best thing, because if I'd gone out
and someone who saw that Instagram post asked me about it,
Yeah.
it would have been like, you know, I would have been like a Punisher, you know,
Right.
like just, and I didn't want to be that guy, man.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I waited.
That's cool. That's a prudent decision to like choose who you want to be in the world. You know, ultimately, we're making micro and macro decisions.
Yeah, I feel
about
like
that every day.
I lost half this year to like some bullshit, but better to look forward than look back. And
Sure.
and I got my money, so it's cool. Worst gig story would probably be, and not because the musicians were awesome. It was due to a sound guy that wouldn't turn the subs down,
Okay.
and basically I couldn't.
You couldn't
I
hear
felt-
anything. There's no clarity.
I felt like I couldn't control my notes.
Yeah.
I felt like I would do the slightest little bit,
Yeah.
and it was like Thor's hammer or some shit, dude. And I got mad as fuck at this guy,
Okay.
and to the point where I told the guy whose gig it was, I can't hear what I'm doing because there's too many subs going on.
Is this like a local gig or is this a concert?
No, this
vibe?
was in Europe, man.
Okay.
This was like on tour in Europe. Like
Okay.
a few weeks into it, or a few gigs into a tour, and like only time I almost like got off stage and threw my bass at somebody. Like that's how fucking, because it was like there was a point during sound check where it's like, this is how this band should sound. It's a 3-piece band. It's a blues rock thing.
Okay.
And like,
But where you could like progressive, where you could do some blowing and.
yeah,
Or were you like a nondescript blues bass player like Double Trouble?
it was both.
Okay.
It was both, but whatever.
That stuff's fun if it's like everybody's locked into that.
Oh
That
yeah, no,
stuff's
it was
so much
great.
fun.
You know, and this was like with one of the great people who do that stuff now. But it was not fun when the sound, like, you know, the drummer was having problems too. But it was like there was a point at sound check. It was like, this sounds great. Don't change it. Don't turn the subs on.
Yeah.
This guy turned on the subs, and it sounded like my bass was going through my octave pedal when I was
Right.
trying to go full synth bass mode, except it wasn't on, and that wasn't the goal. So I got really mad at this dude, and the entire night was like a really difficult exercise in like trying to just
Anger management.
and just try to play the gig, and realizing that people came to see
Sure.
the artist that I'm with, and they don't care
About your
any-
experience, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
So, also the other thing is man, like I knew most of those tunes like 98% of the way, but it made me realize, okay, there's a couple tunes that I don't know as well as I should, and I need to like make sure, like my little dumb cheat sheet in front of the monitor that no one can see but me, I don't need to use it.
Right.
Because like I can't hear what the fuck is going on,
Right.
and now you know. I mean, so
You just got to play it,
Yeah.
whether you know what's happening out there or not.
yeah, and like most of the material was at that point, but there were at least 1 or 2 songs that weren't there, and like no one talked to me about this. This is just my own self like
Yeah.
assessment, but you know, because I'm pretty hard on myself with that stuff. But it was like, yeah, okay, like so now going forward, whenever I have to learn stuff, which is probably my least favorite thing to do,
Learning like
anything.
Love it.
No, because it sucks, man. I mean, unless like it's the kind of thing where, you know, there's a bunch of gigs attached to it.
Sure.
It's-
right. If
it's
it's a
easy-
worthwhile.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
if it's
if
like
there's
for
a
one
purpose.
hit, here's 40 songs. Which ones do you guys normally do? I don't know. Like we'll know the day of.
Man, I'll tell you a story about that when we get off the mic.
So, but no, like I think about that now. Like when I learn music, like how well do I know it? What you know, and it's made me a better preparer. Like
Sure.
because it's like I think that's a thing out here I notice is like really important. Like there's a mentality I think with certain types of side people where like they'll learn enough that they can improvise their way out of stuff, and it's like, no, man, it's parts. Right. It's parts. Like you got to know the parts.
There was this hotel gig that Gatson was doing for a little while, and it was a soul thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never did it with Gatson, but I play the gig regularly. And the piano player, one time when I'm doing it with him,
mm-hmm.
he's a jazz guy too. but he's kind of like the MD of this gig with Gadsden. And Gadsden comes up to him. The piano player tells me the story. Gadsden goes up to the piano player and just like straightens out the piano player. It's like, man, this isn't changes. This is parts.
Right.
This is parts. This music is parts.
Right.
You can't just like know the form and the changes like you would know Stella by Starlight.
Right.
You need to know the part of this thing.
Yeah. He's coming from that world.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Like James, like he was like more of a jazz drummer.
Right.
And got
so
into
many of those
parts.
guys were.
Yeah. So he knows what.
Right.
what
He
that
knows
shit-
both worlds. And yeah, he's the dude to hear it from. Like, if you're going to know that, you need to know the part.
Yeah, dude. Like playing at the parts versus playing the part.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, man. It's a real problem. And I think that's the thing about what we play. It's like, you know, if you're gonna play a gig where you have to play songs with parts, like someone calls Ladies Night. Not that like I do a lot of those types of gigs, but I have. And,
Sure.
And like, you can't not know that bass line, man.
Right.
You just can't.
PYT.
Yeah.
Like that's
That's
woven
the whole
into the tune.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just my imagination. Like
Yeah,
you can't really play your role in those songs adequately if you don't know that stuff. So
It seems like there is a little bit of leeway in that because depending on the era of that music, like
Sure.
a lot of the Jamerson stuff, he would play super live still.
Yeah.
But there was a through line in
Yeah.
his bass line. But he's dancing around a theme he set up.
I think if people understand how his style works, it's not hard to like cover that type of thing and improvise using the types of mechanisms that he would use.
Right.
Like chromatic stuff into chord tones and the bass lines and stuff like that. Like if you can assimilate that kind of thing and like let's say you learn 2 Jamerson bass lines.
Yeah.
And you just find like a little piece of it to Jurassic Park into like another bass line.
Sure.
Like you can figure out like where that shit's gonna work. And
In the transcription thing, I know I've talked about this on the podcast. I did 4. They cover technically easy to like, okay, there's some stuff here.
what do you think the hardest thing you played was? Like Darling Dear? Would you put that sort of up?
I did the gnarliest one in the little Jamerson course is For Once in My Life.
Oh yeah.
Like he's getting after it, and then there's the modulation to G flat.
Yeah.
So the way that falls on the bass. But the first one is Same Old Song by the Four Tops.
Oh yeah.
But then he just plays that down the middle the whole way through.
Yeah. I think Darling Dear's got some of the craziest.
Which one's that?
It's a Jackson 5 song.
I gotta check that one out.
Check that out. It's fucking great, man. I mean, you know, all this stuff is great.
Yeah.
But like that tune is like there's some stuff going on in there, man. Like as with all of his.
Yeah.
I don't think he was on his back drunk for that one, man. or if he was, you know, more power to him.
Yeah, I mean, I put that one in there for,
Yeah.
novelty's sake.
Yeah, they're all great.
Yeah,
lines,
there's a lot
man.
of cool. And there's a progression of like simple, how much he would variate to, really, really live playing.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a lineage of all these things that still work within the Jamerson vibe.
Those are my favorite types of players, though, really, now, man. It's like the people that have a conceptual thing that you can't really distill it to a technical approach or a sound. It's more just decision-making.
Man, yeah, that's the thing. It's
those are the guys and gals, like the really untouchable players to me are the ones where it's like, yeah, I know how they're physically making this work, but
right.
Why did they decide to put that
Pino
there?
is still like makes the best decisions. Now I don't know. I mean, obviously there's live records of him, and you can see him live play a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with that though.
Like where he puts fills, isn't. I don't know if I can really decode it yet. I can't find his method.
Yeah,
but it works.
Yeah,
it just works. And that is the best decision for the entirety of everything he's played, kind of going to play, and for that second in the tune at the same time. Like it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out his method yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely music like that where we're with him and like other people too, like Like, the one thing I really liked about the way Jimmy Johnson played in Holdsworth's band is that, like, he didn't play a lot of notes, but when he came out, it was a similar thing. Like, he knew how to pick and choose his spots. And then, I feel that way about Doug Wimbish, like, especially, like, how he plays on that Living Color record, Stain. Like, there's some really great bass moments on there. But, yeah, I think if someone was going to get scientific about it,
yeah,
like, if... there's like all these like really smart music educated guys that have like awesome YouTube channels like Adam Neely and Rick Beato.
Yeah.
And those guys are like some of my favorite people to watch because everything they put out is like really like smart. But if you were going to take like a real non-musical, just the science of it, how long is the track? When's the first time he plays something that's not the bass line? You figure out if there's a pattern to it.
If there's some kind of algorithm that it's all channeling through.
Yeah. I think ultimately, if you think about really great, memorable bass lines on songs that are popular, there might be one really interesting bass moment, which could be like a slide or a small fill.
Sure.
Like, I don't really remember what all of the bass part is on Aerosmith's Walk This Way, but I know that one fill that he does where he plays like that. He kind of plays like into a minor, like a major third. Yeah. Like higher up on the neck.
Yeah.
And I feel like, like there's little things like that, or like, there's like the obvious things like You Can Call Me Al or something where it's like there's that, what everyone now knows is a backwards bass fill, right?
Right.
Like, I really think like that's the interesting thing about like really good songs that have excellent bass playing. There's usually one or two tiny moments where it's like, oh, cool, okay.
Yeah, just like, hey, like a little bit of a don't forget about me back here. It's just this little moment, but it's not anything that's so. Yeah. But then there's moments where bass drives the thing. I mean, Flea had these really this energy.
Yeah, I love Flea, man.
In the playing, you know him? I don't know him.
I don't know him. That's one dude I really want to meet. I love the way he talks about music. I feel like that's really the way his outlook is about it. Like, I think it's real easy in this thing that we're all doing. It's real easy to get dark, or to not remember like the fundamental great things about it, which is like music for most of us, like I know for me, man, I wouldn't have seen parts of the world at all if it wasn't for playing music. I've gotten to see most of the globe in a lot of ways from just being a musician. Like I would have never gone to India for 3 months and taught at a conservatory if it wasn't for being a musician. Like I would have never been to Australia. I never would have gone to Europe as many times as I have, like South America. Like so there's like this really fundamental, amazing thing that's connected to it. I think being a musician gives you access to people in ways that maybe like other folks don't have access to other people. Like you meet people that are like, maybe like don't look like you or have the same, you know what I mean? Like,
come from just a different, completely
walk of life.
Yeah, there's definitely a diversity.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure New York was like this as well.
Yeah.
Not only because of the diversity of the population, and that both cities are big music cities. Right. So you're going to have a lot of people going there for music school and careers within music. Yeah. But yeah, it's great. Like I love the different people I get to meet. Yeah. And hear their stories. Like I genuinely love doing this and sitting and talking with musicians.
That's cool.
Everybody's story is different, but we're all the same, and I like both. Yeah. I like hearing how we both ended up kind of in this thing from two different walks, but at the same time our process is still, there's a lot alike. We've checked out the same records. At some point in there we've obsessed over the same guys. We've tried to learn the same things. Yeah. You probably sat with Show of Hands as much as I did back in the day when that record came out. Yeah, like it's just we all had similar experiences, but we got there from different angles, and I like that.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true, man.
You teach at Wooten's camp, right?
No, I've done the Berkeley. So Berkeley College of Music. I don't do this anymore, but Berkeley College of Music had this thing for a while called Basslines, and it was like a 3-day thing for prospective students to come to the school and have like a bass-centric 3 days. And so when Rich Appleman was still the chairman of the bass department, he brought me in, and so I was doing that. My feeling at the time was I wanted to keep a relationship with that school.
Yeah.
Because maybe I would.
Interested in doing faculty?
Yeah. Well, at one point I thought I was, and then Steve Bailey took over, and Steve's cool. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
He kept me on, and Vic was involved. Vic sort of became the face of it.
Sure.
Vic and I, we're cool. I like
Nice.
Vic a lot. I actually interviewed to teach there, and like the last 2 years of New York for me, which I sort of knew, I was at that crossroads. Like I knew basically I was going to leave the city. I'd just gotten out of like a relationship that, like she and I weren't a good match, and
Tumultuous situation.
well, it just, man, they never start out that way.
No.
It's just we weren't in the same.
They always start out the same way with like, wow, she's so much different. This is
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. Well,
And then
everyone
they
gets
don't end
drunk
that
on
way.
the chemicals, man, and then then you start fighting like, what fucking farmers market do I not want to go to on,
Right.
Or whatever, man. And like,
Yeah.
like we all have our things. So, like my original plan to come out here dates back as far as like 2011. Like after I finished that record, like my second record, Steve Jenkins and the Coaxial Flutter. I guess I should also say that's on Spotify and Apple Music. So
Yeah.
people want
I'll have links up on the page. And
Cool.
Yeah, just hit me at any other links you want out there.
Cool. Like I essentially thought I was gonna move after that.
Okay.
There
Just
was
a change of headspace.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, New York. So the place that I got to with New York was that I stopped seeing a future that seemed appealing to me there. It wasn't the kind of thing. There's no shortage of great musicians, but I felt like I'd been there a long time. I also feel like maybe in New York you get to have 2 or 3 really hard resets
Okay.
where you can start over and maybe your energy's a little bit back to how it was when you got there.
Right.
I just couldn't
You
channel
couldn't-
that anymore, man.
Yeah.
And like I felt like there was a lot of stuff going.
Looking up directions.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. That's hilarious. Checking what time I got to leave for this gig.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um.
I should probably wrap it up.
All right. Cool. Yeah. Finish
Which
up.
kind of sucks because this is
Yeah.
just going for it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say.
I had a similar situation after a couple. There's been a few hard resets in my life, and after
Yeah.
my divorce, which was about 4 years ago,
Uh,
really wondering similarly, like, man, do I just do it? I got some homies out in New York, like, just make a go of it and see what happens there.
yeah.
Like, there's nothing keeping me here anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe just screw it all, and just do it.
Yeah.
But it was that I didn't have I was 34 then. I didn't have the thing to just show up at a new city again. I had already done it in LA.
Yeah.
There had been some hard resets in Phoenix with this major car accident I was in, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's a whole different story. But
Yeah. That's a lot, man.
it's just these always things of I'm never really progressing or moving forward,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I need to just move forward in something now. So I decided here, but I understand the hard
Yeah.
resets.
So New York, the last 2 years, it became a period of time where I knew that the last place I lived, which my friend who's in Lettuce kind of hooked me up with. Like, he was like, hey, man, I used to live at this dude's place. I moved across the street because he was married. He's like, but you should totally move here. It's a good place to live. And it was an awesome roommate.
Yeah.
Best experience I ever had in
Okay.
the city, with someone, as far as sharing a place with someone and just cool dude to hang with on the downtime.
Right.
So I knew that was going to be it for me. When I unpacked the last box there, in my head subconsciously and not so subconsciously, I said, after this, we're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that 2-year period, I did a bunch of things, man. Like I tried my hand at some Broadway stuff, which didn't really work. Like I didn't love it.
You play upright at all?
No.
Like not even enough to. I mean, I know you can't. I have friends on the Broadway thing, and I know you can't really phone it in on it.
No,
there's Arco. There's
I mean,
but I know that that's like the work in New York.
That
like,
is the work, and I had no interest in it.
Sure.
And it's cool because it didn't really like me either. So it sort of
right.
like it just
mutually will go our own ways.
Yeah, like I man, it's weird. Like I have friends that did it. I'm grateful I got a chance to try my hand at it a couple times, but
what were the shows?
I just did one. It was Kinky Boots.
Okay.
I did a few of them. They didn't like me, so that was it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I didn't sound enough like the guy who normally does it, or like, it wasn't like I went in there and just like putting it on like the front pickup sound or the back pickup sound. Like, man, it's not, that's just not my forte. Like
the paint by numbers, you don't exist thing. I mean, that seems like it's the antithesis, if that's the right word, to what you're actually hoping to do.
Yeah.
With
or maybe
yourself
I just,
and in your artistry.
Yeah. Or maybe I didn't want it. Maybe that was evident in how I was playing it. Or maybe I didn't know that shit as well as I should have. Or it just didn't,
Either way, the desire wasn't there to.
Yeah, the desire.
Shed it as much as maybe it needed to be shedded. Or show up with the attitude. Because when you really want a gig.
Yeah.
Or you're playing with dudes like you really want to make an impression on.
Yeah.
You'll cover all your bases.
For all I know, I probably could have. This is probably what happened. Like, and I'm fine talking about stuff that's not like a win. Like, I probably plugged my bass in or plugged the bass in there, and I probably sounded like I'm giving this a shot. It probably it probably didn't sound. Like, I mean, I know the guys in the pit said I sounded great, and like I know I played that stuff well enough, but man, maybe there just wasn't enough desire in the way I was playing it, and that's fine because I didn't really want to do it.
Right, because I was honest.
I also feel like there's a thing that happens where people chase things that they feel like they should chase, but the question is, who's telling you that you should do anything?
Man, that is a whole other conversation and probably podcast episode in general of these ideas we have that we think we should be doing, even though they're not necessarily the most genuine internal thing.
So I had that with the Berkeley thing. Because it's like, man, I've been teaching this summer thing for years, and when is it going to parlay into like an actual thing? And so Bailey emailed me saying, hey, look, man, we need another teacher because, I guess this was the spot that was like for when Victor Bailey passed, like they had to replace. So I interviewed, I got fairly far in the process.
3 or 4 years ago?
3-4 years ago, 2016. I had a great cast of people write me recommendations.
Amazing.
Did the interview. Halfway through, I realized I didn't want to do this.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go back to Boston, or I didn't want to stay on the East Coast and like commute to Boston. And it was a really weirdly sobering moment to realize, man, this wasn't maybe.
Right. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that like? There's been little personal check-ins like that in my life. I don't remember what they all are, but it's like going on the road was kind of one. Like a bunch of my friends were doing big pop acts. When I got here and I started to meet some of those people, everybody's like, here, you go talk to this guy, and he'll tell you about auditions and go do the big pop tours. And I wasn't interested enough to follow through with it. And then it was at a certain age I realized I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I know so many musicians come to LA to get on a big pop tour.
Yeah.
I'm just not interested.
What's the let me ask you this, because I don't know how I feel about all that stuff, but I know that like there's pitfall. I have a friend who does that very thing.
Okay. Bass player?
Yeah, bass player.
Okay.
Very smart guy too, and he knows that there's a shelf life to those gigs, and he's well aware of that. And he's even, I don't want to say his name because I don't want to like out.
Sure.
Because he wasn't talking smack about that scene. He was just saying, look, you're useful until you're not.
Yeah.
And that's what.
And you're incredibly
expendable.
Yes, exactly. And then you are within anything except for when you're you.
Yeah.
Because like that's really all we have is you're the only Steve Jenkins, I'm the only Ryan Roberts, but this is it. If we're releasing our own content, you're not. You've created your own value by establishing how your mind works and how you feel about music and people and how all that comes together.
Yeah. So, like, what's the deal with all that stuff? Like, I mean, is it like some skulls type shit? Is like or is it like, you know, do you have to like drink the blood of like some like songwriter with Ricky Minor? Like, how does that shit work? Watch, I'll never get a fucking Pop Tornado.
Ricky Minor, I like that reference. Man, I don't know. Like, because I've never really dipped my toe in the pool, I don't know what the hustle is. Like, there's a couple I've just chose not to do, and to my detriment, that means that there's only a few things left in LA. But I wasn't interested in the pop tour.
Why not? Is it?
When I got here, I was 24, and I was still trying to go to New York City College.
Okay.
And I play upright too, and I was shedding upright a lot, and I didn't want to go out and not be able to practice upright.
Okay.
Because, like, I wanted to be a doubler.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get into the school and all that.
Yeah.
And then after I got accepted to the school, you know, my ex-wife and I didn't have the money to move to New York.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, screw it, we'll stay here. And then, you know, started getting in and meeting more people and connecting and making a living here. And then it just wasn't, I don't know, like, I'd do it probably. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if, like, somebody's MD called right now.
Yeah.
Yes, of course I would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would do it.
I think that was also a thing of me being young and having this vision for my life that I'm going to, you know, I'm going to go study with Patitucci for a while, then I'm going to start releasing all these records, and I'll be on the cover of Downbeat, and, like, all of it is really going to happen. I just took a little delay.
Yeah.
Now at 37, like, sure, yeah. You know, I'm in. Like, just when I need a gig.
Yeah, I think
and I'm okay with that because every gig ends. No matter what it is.
Right.
None of it will have ever defined me as a bass player.
That's an important thing to learn, man.
It's like, it's just a gig, and if it seems cool and the dudes in it are cool, it's just another experience.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah, I just, you know, I'm at the point with that stuff. I would love to do it, but it's also like, well, I don't look like I'm 24 anymore. I don't look my age necessarily, but I don't look 24. So it's like, you know, I don't think I'm going to get a Disney gig.
Man, we can talk about that. I know some dudes on them, and they're not what you think they are.
Yeah.
And it's like, then when I hear
hookers and cocaine, or no?
Yeah. Then when I hear the behind the, you know, about like what the bread is on some of these gigs, and it's just like, really?
Yeah.
Like, I make better money in town.
Yeah, no, that's
and I get to come home to like my stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing now too, man. It's like there's economic realities about how you want to spend your time, and time, as we all know, is like the one thing you'll never get back. So it's like, you know, if I got to fucking like back up some kid that doesn't really sing and make sure I have Ableton Live, like, you know, fuck that. Yeah. Like seriously, man. Right. But if it's like, okay, this kid writes tunes and he plays and like it's a band, and I might be into that. Yeah. But like, you know, I don't know, man. Like I never for a second don't forget that this is entertainment, and we're in the entertainment business, and like the entertainment business is also fueled by nostalgia, and like this is a pitfall that we all sort of run up against, and you know, it's a very meta way of looking at it. Like it's not that complex, you know. Right.
And I think like you get into any aspect of art music within it, you know, then the focus becomes not on entertainment but on artistic, personalized. Yeah. What you're putting out into the world, and it's an artistic decision, and it's not just commerce for entertainment. Yeah. But it both have value because you need entertainment in the world. Oh yeah. You know, there's really heavy films that talk about social realities. Yeah. And then there's just, you know, Airplane 2. Right. You know, which is not a strong statement about our culture, but it's hilarious, and that's just entertainment. They have equal value. I guess it's just whatever one you're cool with. Yeah. As long as you know the deal going in, one won't be the other. Yeah, absolutely. I just think, you know, if you think about, maybe it will. I don't know. I don't want to say such a blanket statement. I mean, you know, like the question I have for everyone who's like, who would you want to play with? Like, what's the biggest gig
There is.
Let's wrap with that. What's your answer? What's your dream band? If you could assemble 4 or 5 guys?
Oh, like a dream band versus like
not something that's already existing.
Somewhat like versus like what would the ultimate call be?
Right. Because I'm interested in both.
My friend, he said this to me once, man. He's a really good bass player. He lives out here. Travis Carlton.
Oh yeah, Travis.
Travis, we were talking about. I forgot who it was, man. I think we were talking about like D'Angelo's gig or something. Yeah. And he's like, I would love to do that gig, but I don't want that guy to yell at me. And so that's how I think. That's kind of how I think about those fantasy situations. Sure. Like, just, I would love to play with Prince, but dude, if that was ever reality, it's like, I don't know. Like, do you want to be
in a working relationship with a hero? Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that punk rock thing of fuck your heroes.
Yeah.
Is kind of important if you really want to do something, because like, I spent the first part of my career sort of, like I read the Miles book, and it's like, I guess you're supposed to chase your heroes down and try to work with them. And it's like,
we're all looking for how'd they do it. Like, that's the way in. Yeah. Like, how learning from their process to come up. And it's at a certain point we realize like it's completely whatever you make it.
Yeah. I think that's cool. But I also think, people that have just taken it upon themselves to make stuff and then that's their way in.
Sure.
I think that is sort of where we're at now.
It's definitely on the individual's personal passion to release in a do-it-yourself world. Yeah.
There's a couple dream team. Like, there's a band. I mean, this isn't really that far-fetched. Like, I was talking to Mark Lettieri yesterday about maybe doing something with Deitch, just like a trio thing, maybe like a one-off gig or some stuff. I would love to do like, like some kind of a metal thing, just to do like with some prog metal type stuff, but like with I'm trying to think who I would get like on all the instruments, but like, I don't know, man. It would be fun to do something with like one of those guitar players, like
on some Meshuggah vibe?
Yeah, or, just where, like, the writings are, like, really interesting.
Yeah.
And, like, there's cool rhythm stuff. I don't really have, like, a cast, per se, that I would want to, like, do some stuff with. I mean, I know, like, all the Animals guys. I played on one of Javier's tracks on his last record. And those guys are cool. I would love to play with those dudes in Chan, just to see what it's like. Or I would write something and have them play on it.
Yeah.
But no, man, I mean, I'll tell you what, dude. The one dude I really want to play with that hasn't happened, and he really liked my second record, was Dennis Chambers.
Dope.
Because when I was in New York,
How is he? I heard that there was some...
He's good now.
Okay. I heard that there were some things. I don't know what it was exactly. I had some drummers hit me up like, dude, you know what's happening with Dennis Chambers?
That was a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
He's fine now.
Okay.
He had some kind of stomach thing in it. He lost a lot of weight, and I don't know all the ins and outs.
That was the alarm, and like I heard there wasn't talk as if it was going around, but there were some friends that were concerned. Like, man, you think he's got cancer or something? Yeah, no, he's good. But so I was working. I had a part-time day gig for some of the time I was in New York, and I don't think a lot of people knew that, because there was a point where I got kind of, I just didn't want to do music full time, or I didn't want to like have to say yes to stuff I didn't want to do. Yeah. So I was working at the Apple store in Soho. Okay. And not a lot of people knew this, but I can rap with this. Dennis came in once. It was like a real hot day in the summer. And it was like, I don't know, he was just hanging because he was on the road with Santana. Okay.
So I'm kind of on my way out of this job because it's like I'm getting busier with music stuff, and I knew I was sort of going to end it soon. So I didn't really give a fuck, man. I was like, I'm just going to hang with Dennis and talk to him. And so, like, we talked about music. There's a lot of mutual friends that we have because, I'm from Maryland. He's from Maryland.
Okay.
And so, like, he wanted to hear some of my music. And so I played him that record, and he was pretty blown away by it.
Great.
So he tried to get some people to listen to it, like labels and shit. And it didn't happen, but we talked about it on the phone. He was like super cool about it.
Okay, he was really supportive. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would love to play something with him sometime, man.
Yeah.
Like on drums.
Does he live out here? I don't know that much about him.
He's in Baltimore still.
Still.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would love to play with him. I'd love to play with Vinny. I think it'd be fun to play with like someone like a Jeff Beck type guy, or
It'd be fun to play with Beck. That would be. He's a hero. I would
Beck
love to.
and Jeff Beck. Like,
Yeah.
Beck the singer-songwriter.
Oh, right. I was thinking Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
I mean, Beck the singer-songwriter, yes. But Jeff Beck is on the list of, like, dream dudes to play with.
9 Inch Nails. That would be a fun gig.
Okay.
I don't know if that would be, like, the funnest gig to be on. I actually saw them when Pino was in the band.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like, I don't really know. Like, that's another thing. It's like, I love Trent's music, but it's kind of like, do I want that guy, like, yelling at me before?
Yeah.
It's
going to happen.
It's probably
maybe.
going to be fucking cool, man, because that drummer's dealing, man. Like, Elon Rubin. So it's like, that would be a fun gig. I don't know, man. Like, there's been a couple times where me and Michelle have talked about doing stuff. Like,
that'd be dope.
It's just never happened. Like, she wanted me to do some writing with her, and we, it always gets to a certain point, and then nothing happens.
Is she out here?
Yeah, she's out here sometimes. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I'm always up for the wild card thing too. But like, as far as people I definitely want to play with at least once, Dennis, absolutely. Yeah. Like, I would love to play with Dennis with like people that like play the shit out of like groove stuff though.
Okay.
That can maybe stretch, but also have like, because he's the kind of dude that like he can just ride one thing and it just sounds awesome.
Right.
But then when it's time to blaze,
he's got it.
That dude can blaze. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's fair. Cool, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, dude.
Sorry, I got to cut it short. Even, this is like 3 hours or something. But
yeah, feel free to edit this liberally, man.
No, but I like it. I like the. I don't know if people make it all the way through in one sitting, but whatever.
It's like Joe Rogan's podcast, man. They're like
I like his though. I like what's the dude's name? Sadgad, that's on his podcast. He's made a couple appearances on Rogan's podcast.
No, I don't, because I haven't heard all of them. Like I've seen a lot. Like I watch them on here.
Yeah, okay. I've heard Rogan talk about the visual element to his. I've thought about doing it, but then it's like a multi-camera thing. I don't want to do just one camera.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I don't want to prep for a camera. Like I want to just like show up.
Audio's still pretty cool, man.
And just keep it cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, dude, thanks for doing it.
Absolutely, man.
Killing, man. All right, that was Steve Jenkins. There's some good stuff in there. I really enjoyed talking to Steve. We went some places, but it was all kind of there was this kind of strong narrative through line that was going all the way through. I had a lot of fun speaking with him about all that stuff. Again, his records are Mad Science and Steve Jenkins and the Coaxial Flutter. I will have those links up at thebasshed.com/podcast/Steve Jenkins. Feel free to reach out to me at any point at ryan@thebasshed.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider donating whatever you think the podcast is worth to you. There's a link at thebasshed.com / I still don't know the deal with the slash. I don't know which way it's going. thebasshed.com / There's a link there if you would like to support the Bass Shed. Thanks so much, and I will catch you on the next one.